Welcome to Mindset Matters Book Club YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries.
We are so excited today.
We really are. We're about to dive into a book that, honestly, it feels like a foundational roadmap. It's this profound shortcut to understanding the single most powerful remedy for trauma, for chronic stress, for just deep physiological dysregulation.
And that remedy is the experience of genuine safety.
Exactly.
The book is Safe and Sound, a polyvagal approach for connection, change, and healing. And it's authored by the man himself, Stephen W. Porges, PhD, the founder of the theory, along with Porges and Onderko.
And it has a foreword by Peter A. Levine, PhD, which is, a huge endorsement right there.
It really is. This book, it's essential. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned clinician, a parent, or just, someone who's intensely curious about how your own nervous system is basically running the show.
Running your entire life experience. So our mission for this deep dive is to take you straight to the heart of this work. We're going to unpack the foundational science of the Polyvagal Theory -PVT, as we'll call it.
And then we'll get into its really groundbreaking application, the Safe and Sound Protocol, or SSP.
Right. We want to understand in serious depth why simply feeling safe, often bypassing years of just cognitive work, of talk therapy, is the key to well-being. And how our nervous system is really the central player in everything. Everything we feel, we think, we do.
It's so much more than just a theory. It's a radical shift in perspective. It really is. It lets you move from judging behavior, your own or someone else's, as being flawed or intentional.
Or manipulative, even.
Yes, exactly. To seeing it with compassion as an adaptive, reflexive defense mechanism. And that lens, it just changes everything.
It absolutely does. So we've structured this to build on itself. We'll start in part one, really establishing the scientific framework of PVT.
Then in part two, we're going to zoom right in on the mechanism of the SSP, how this acoustic intervention actually retunes the nervous system.
Part three is where it all comes to life. We've got these powerful, really detailed case studies showing the impact on everything from chronic pain to dissociation and even family grief.
And finally, in part four, we'll give you some practical, self-directed tools from the book's regulation toolbox so you can start cultivating this resilience for yourself.
Okay, let's get started. Part one, the foundational science.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I think most of us come to this conversation with a basic understanding of the autonomic nervous system, the ANS.
Right.
And historically, that model was always binary. You were either in sympathetic activation,
Your fight or flight.
or you were in parasympathetic relaxation.
Rest and digest. Simple.
Exactly. But Porges's work just immediately complicates this. Why is that old two-part model just fundamentally not enough to explain the full spectrum of what it is to be human?
Because that traditional model, it was helpful for its time,
Right.
but it missed a crucial evolutionary layer, a huge one. Porges realized that this big umbrella term, parasympathetic, actually held two very, very distinct systems, each with its own evolutionary timeline, its own physiological job. And the term polyvagal, it really underscores that key division. The parasympathetic branch is split into the newer, more sophisticated ventral vagal complex and the older, much more primitive dorsal vagal complex.
Yeah.
And recognizing that gives us this nuanced three-part system we actually need to map our human states accurately.
So it's not an on-off switch anymore. It's more like a sophisticated hierarchy.
Exactly, a hierarchy. And the scale of this system's influence is just staggering.
Yeah.
The book really stresses that our physiological state, which is guided by the ANS, isn't just, running basic functions like breathing in the background.
Right.
It is a profoundly integrated system. It's the platform for our health, for our emotional resilience, for our capacity to actually connect with other people.
So if it's dysregulated.
If the ANS is chronically dysregulated, if it's stuck in a state of defense, it compromises all these core functions. And that leads to issues that seem totally separate.
Yeah.
Things like anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic pain, even just not being able to sleep.
You mentioned integration. I want to dig into that a little deeper. We're not just talking about gut motility here, are we?
Oh, not at all. Not even close. We're talking about the entire body-brain condition. PVT really posits that the ANS is the central hub. It's constantly integrating with the endocrine system, your hormones, the immune system, inflammation, defense, and the neuropeptide systems.
Like oxytocin for social bonding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're chronically locked in a dorsal vagal shutdown state, this deep defense state is designed to conserve life resources. It dramatically suppresses your immune response.
Which would be adaptive if you're, I don't know, about to be eaten.
Right. It's very adaptive for surviving an overwhelming life threat. But it becomes incredibly detrimental when it's prolonged. It leads to increased susceptibility to illness, chronic inflammation. It's a direct, measurable link between your physiological state and your long-term physical health.
And the main conduit, the superhighway for all this integration between the brain and the body, is the vagus nerve.
It is truly the king of nerves.
Yeah.
Cranial nerve X, it's the primary bidirectional highway, and it carries a staggering amount of traffic. What makes it so unique is that roughly 80% of its fibers are efferent.
Meaning they carry information from the body up to the brain.
Yes. From the organs, the viscera, the gut, all flowing up to the brainstem. Only about 20% are efferent, carrying commands back down.
Wow.
This tells us something profound. The body is constantly influencing the brain far, far more than the brain is directing the body. The vagus nerve is basically delivering the body's moment-to-moment assessment of safety or danger.
That just reframes the entire conversation, doesn't it? The brain is responding to the body's state, not necessarily initiating it.
It's a huge shift in thinking.
Okay, so central to the newest, most sophisticated part of the vagus nerve, that ventral vagus, is a mechanism we have to fully understand. It's called the vagal brake.
The vagal brake is, I would argue, the single most important concept for understanding what resilience actually is, physiologically. This mechanism, controlled by that myelinated ventral vagus pathway, is a critical regulator of the heart.
How does it work?
Well, when we detect cues of safety, a gentle touch, a friendly face, a soothing tone of voice, the ventral vagus activates, the brake engages, and our heart rate smoothly slows down.
So it's not just about having a slow heart rate. It's the capacity to slow it down flexibly.
Precisely. That's the key. When we perceive a threat, the brake is instantly released. The heart rate accelerates, preparing the body for mobilization. This quick, fluid ability to engage and release the brake is what clinicians measure as heart rate variability, or HRV.
So high HRV is a good thing.
High HRV is the gold standard. It means your heart rate changes rapidly and efficiently in response to cues. It's a direct, measurable index of strong ventral vagal tone. And that means high nervous system flexibility and resilience. The whole therapeutic goal, really, is to strengthen this brake.
Okay, let's use this framework now to map out those 3 physiological states the nervous system cycles through. And it does so sequentially, right, along the evolutionary timeline, from newest defense to oldest.
Right. So we begin at the top with the newest, distinctly mammalian pathway, the ventral vagal state. We can call it the green state.
The metaphor in the book is we are floating.
We are floating. This is our primary state of social engagement, safety, and rest. Physiologically, the vagal brake is fully engaged, HRV is high, our facial muscles are expressive, and we're open to connection.
And behaviors in this state.
They're compassionate, creative, playful, authentic. This is where health, growth, and restoration like digestion and cellular repair are prioritized. It's the only state where true co-regulation with others is even possible.
But if the cues in the environment shift and a threat is detected, something manageable, we mobilize into the next state down the ladder.
The classic sympathetic state. This is red. And the metaphor is we are flipping out.
I think we all know that one.
We do. This is the mobilization for fight or flight. It's metabolically very costly, it's adrenaline-driven, and it's designed for speed and power. Physiologically, the vagal brake is released, heart rate shoots up, breathing gets shallow, muscles tense.
And importantly, our thinking changes.
Radically. Higher cognitive function just narrows. It often leads to black and white thinking, irritability, hypervigilance. The goal here is just swift action and survival.
And if that threat is perceived as overwhelming, inescapable, a life threat, the system defaults to its most ancient, deep defense strategy.
That is the dorsal vagal state, the gray state. The metaphor is we are flopping down. This response is mediated by the unmyelinated dorsal vagus, a pathway we share with reptiles.
So it's a shutdown.
It's a biological conservation strategy, an immobilization or collapse designed to conserve resources when death feels imminent. Physiologically, the heart rate can plummet dangerously, breathing is incredibly shallow, energy is critically low.
And the feeling?
Profound numbness, dissociation, a feeling of heaviness. The mental state is characterized by hopelessness, apathy, and feeling just completely cut off from the world.
That hierarchy is so important to remember. Ventral to sympathetic to dorsal. It shows the body is always trying the newest, most sophisticated strategy first. It only shuts down when everything else has failed.
Precisely. And the reversal process is just as important. You don't jump straight from gray, from shutdown, back to green, back to safety.
You have to climb back up the ladder.
You have to climb back up. When safety cues are detected, you first need a jolt of sympathetic activation to get out of dorsal. This might look like frustration or anger or shaking. It's energy the system has to shed before it can settle.
Which people often misinterpret as a setback.
All the time. They think, oh no, I'm getting angry, I'm going backward. But it's actually progress. Then, and only then, can the ventral vagal system re-engage and settle the system back into safety.
And there are also blended states, which makes it even more complex, like the difference between play and freeze.
Right. Play is a beautiful blend. It's ventral safety plus sympathetic activation. You have all this energy, but because the ventral vagal system is online, that energy is non-defensive, it's joyous, it's flexible.
That freeze.
Freeze is a defensive blend of sympathetic activation and dorsal immobilization. The mind is hypervigilant, that's the red state sensing threat, but the body is immobilized. That's the gray state. You're locked in high alarm with no capacity for action. It's incredibly metabolically draining.
And all of this complex hierarchical cycling is driven by what the book calls an unconscious assessment of safety. This brings us to neuroception.
Neuroception is really Porges' key insight. It's this continuous, reflexive, and totally unconscious scanning process. The nervous system is assessing cues of safety or threat from three places: the environment around us, our relationships with others, and our own internal body state.
And it happens faster than thought.
Way faster. It automatically sets the physiological state. We don't choose our neuroception. It happens to us.
So if neuroception is the alarm system, then interoception is like the conscious reading of the gauges inside the cockpit.
That is a great analogy. Interoception is the conscious awareness of our internal bodily sensations. You know, the tension in your shoulders, the flutter in your stomach, the feeling of thirst. The goal of a lot of somatic work is to improve your interoception so you can accurately read the signals neuroception is already triggered.
So you can gain the potential to self-regulate.
Exactly. By consciously sensing and differentiating these subtle feelings, you enhance your emotional awareness.
Okay, before we move on, let's just circle back to what the book calls the forgiving aspect of PVT. It's really the deep synthesis of this whole section.
Yes. This is, I think, the most profound gift of this theory. It's compassion. It tells you that if you or someone you love behaves in a way that seems irrational, anger, avoidance, apathy, intense fear, that behavior is overwhelmingly driven by an autonomic state that's locked in defense.
It's not a choice.
It's a reflexive biological response.
Yeah.
It is not a conscious character flaw or a deliberate manipulation or intentional disregard. And shifting from judging the behavior to understanding the underlying physiological state that just fundamentally opens the door to empathy and to healing.
So the really profound implication of everything we've just discussed is that if our defense systems are fundamentally rooted in physiological responses to threat,
then the road to healing must target that physiology first.
Exactly. Which brings us beautifully to the intervention that's built directly from this science, the Safe and Sound Protocol, or SSP.
The SSP it's truly revolutionary in its elegance and its simplicity. It's a non-invasive, passive listening therapy. You listen to music specifically, popular music that has been digitally filtered to achieve a very precise effect.
Porges calls it an acoustic vagus nerve stimulator.
That's what it is. It's delivering unambiguous cues of safety directly to the nervous system through the auditory pathway.
Okay, so what is that filter actually doing to the music? Why this specific range of sound?
So the filtering emphasizes the frequencies of the human voice, specifically that high middle range between about 1,500 and 3,500 hertz.
And there's an evolutionary reason for that.
A huge one. Think about it. Low frequency sounds below 500 hertz carry over great distances. They're associated with environmental threats, the growl of a predator, the rumble of a storm, heavy footsteps. They trigger an automatic defensive response in us.
Right.
Conversely, that mid-range frequency is the sweet spot of nonverbal human prosody. It's the intonation, the rhythm, the musicality of a calm, supportive voice, like a mother's lullaby. The SSP filtration literally strips away the low-frequency threat signals and the high-frequency environmental noise, leaving only these modulated safety signals.
And this mechanism is specifically targeting what Porges calls the social engagement system, the SES.
Correct. The SES is a network of cranial nerves, all located in the brainstem and all under the influence of the ventral vagal complex. And it orchestrates our entire capacity for connection.
It involves 5 key cranial nerves.
5 of them: trigeminal, facial, glossopharyngeal, vagus, and accessory. And these nerves regulate the muscles of the face, the voice, the neck, and crucially, the middle ear, the very muscles we use to connect and co-regulate with each other.
Okay, let's get a little more technical on the auditory tuning part. How does listening to this music change the actual mechanics of your ear?
This is the core physiological intervention. This is where the magic happens. The SSP specifically targets two tiny little muscles in the middle ear, the tensor tympani and the stapedius.
I've heard of these.
So these muscles, they contract when we are in a ventral state of safety. And when they contract, they stiffen the eardrum and the little chain of bones in there, the ossicles. This action works like a biological noise-canceling system.
Yeah.
It dampens those low-frequency danger signals. And at the same time, it enhances our detection of those mid-range human voice prosodies.
That is just profound. So if you're chronically defensive, say in a sympathetic or dorsal state, those muscles are relaxed and floppy, and they're just letting in all the noise, which just perpetuates the defense cycle.
You've got it. When the system is chronically defensive, those muscles are flaccid. This means background noise becomes overwhelming, speech can sound distorted, and your ability to differentiate the subtle safety cues in a human voice is profoundly diminished.
This explains so much about auditory hypersensitivity.
It does. It's why people with chronic dysregulation often can't follow conversations in a crowded room or have recurring ear issues, like Katie in the case we'll discuss. The SSP is literally retraining these muscles to function optimally by repeatedly giving them the ideal safety frequency.
And the neural exercise part isn't just listening to calming music, it's the dynamic modulation of that sound.
Absolutely. Porges engineered the music with these rapid dynamic frequency shifts, temporary precise fade-outs and changes in tone. You can think of it as interval training for your nervous system.
So it's a workout.
It's a workout. This pattern repeatedly engages and disengages the vagal brake hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of the protocol. It's forcing the nervous system to practice transitioning between states, from mild activation to instant calming, and that trains it for greater fluidity and resilience. You're fundamentally increasing the system's capacity to return home to safety after being mildly challenged.
This mechanical approach, then, leads to a key distinction. The SSP is fundamentally a bottom-up therapy, which is very different from most cognitive behavioral approaches.
This is so essential for you to grasp. Traditional cognitive therapies, like CBT or talk therapy, are top-down. They require conscious processing, narrative, beliefs, executive function, all that higher brain stuff to create change.
Right.
But the book emphasizes this critical neurobiological fact. When your body is locked in sympathetic or dorsal defense, it literally shifts metabolic resources away from your prefrontal cortex, the center of all that executive function, and directs them toward survival reflexes in the brainstem.
So if you're trapped in a state of defense, asking you to cognitively reframe your trauma is like asking a fish to climb a tree.
It is. The system physically cannot prioritize complex thought when it perceives a life threat. SSP completely circumvents this bottleneck. By using the auditory pathway, the sensory input is transmitted directly to the brainstem, which is where the ANS control center lives.
It's a purely somatic, physiological, bottom-up approach.
It calms the defense state first, allowing the system to stabilize before the mind is even asked to engage.
But the authors are very clear that the delivery context matters immensely. If it's purely bottom-up, why do they stress the need for a regulated expert provider? Doesn't the science just work regardless?
That's a great question, and it really gets at the nuance here. While the music works at the brainstem level, the context is anything but sterile. For clients with complex trauma, the cue of safety, even filtered music, can be interpreted by their system as vulnerability.
And vulnerability equals threat.
And vulnerability equals threat. So a regulated provider is necessary for co-regulation. The provider's own ventral vagal state, their calm tone, their open face, their steady presence, provides the immediate nonverbal cues of safety that allow the client's system to relax enough for the sound to be received as a safe input.
So the best delivery is really a hybrid. You have the bottom-up SSP combined with the top-down element of the provider's psychoeducation, which gives the client a language for what they're experiencing.
Absolutely. The provider helps the client name their states, green, red, gray, and understand their responses are defenses, not failures. This co-creation of a shared language is the crucial top-down component that anchors the physiological shift in conscious understanding.
So the SSP, then, is suitable for pretty much everyone, since it bypasses the need for high cognition. What are some of the common functional benefits that people see?
Well, since the aim is to alleviate general dysregulation, the benefits are really broad. Improved sleep, better digestion, reduced anxiety, less chronic pain. But the most direct results relate to the social engagement system coming back online.
A thawing effect.
That's what providers call it. You see better vocal intonation, More musical, less monotone, increased facial expressivity, a more genuine smile, and a greater capacity for sustained eye contact. The client is literally becoming more accessible and available for connection.
But we have to reiterate that crucial trauma caveat one more time.
We must. For clients with severe interpersonal trauma, the pace is everything. Providers have to approach this with extreme caution. The mantra is safe before sound. It means starting with listening times as short as a few seconds, and using the provider's regulated presence as the dominant anchor of safety. If you push too quickly, you can trigger a massive sympathetic surge or a total dorsal vagal shutdown, which just re-traumatizes the client. The success of SSP is often inversely proportional to the speed of delivery.
Okay, let's move to the practical reality of this theory. The book illustrates how profoundly shifting the nervous system towards safety can unlock healing across this stunning variety of symptoms. These case stories are where the principles, for me, just truly come alive.
Yeah, this is the good stuff. We'll start with Katie, a case that so vividly illustrates how physiological defense mechanisms can directly hijack the auditory system and create this whole cascade of symptoms.
Right. Katie was a vibrant, developing child, but then a mild virus led to this intense regression. Her system just spiraled into a chronic defense state.
And it manifested as severe anxiety, extreme emotional lability, so she was alternating between explosive anger and deep shutdown, and this really rigid set of rituals.
But the most disruptive part was her sensory defensiveness.
That defensiveness was staggering. She became so hypersensitive to textures that she would only wear a single pair of specific pants. That sensory restriction, that need to narrow input to feel safe, is a classic sign of a system that's locked in hypervigilance.
And this defensive state directly triggered her auditory tuning problem.
It did. Let's talk about specifically how her neuroception of threat affected her hearing. Because her system was in such a heightened state of defense, her middle ear muscles were compromised. They were amplifying those low-frequency sounds associated with threat.
So she started actively avoiding two specific people.
Her father and her grandfather. The insight was that their voices naturally fell into a lower frequency band than her mother's. Her neuroception was interpreting the deep, loving tones of her male relatives as potential predator signals.
Wow. So it was triggering an automatic sympathetic defense.
Exactly. The symptom wasn't Katie dislikes her father. The symptom was Katie's nervous system is biologically programmed to perceive low frequencies as a threat.
So how did Tracy, the provider, create enough safety for the SSP to actually work?
Tracy knew the music by itself wasn't going to override this deep defensive programming. So her strategy was all about co-regulation. She emphasized what the book calls regulation, reassurance, and rituals.
Okay.
Regulation involved constant, gentle psychoeducation, explaining to Katie and her parents that her system was just on overdrive trying to protect her. Reassurance was nonverbal. It was Tracy's warm, regulated presence, supported touch, and creating designated cuddle puddle time with her mother.
And the rituals, what were those?
The rituals were grounding anchors that created predictability and safety. Things like drawing hearts on their hands as visual safety cues and repeating a daily affirmation. You are safe, you are loved. This consistent, safe, ritualized environment allowed the SSP, which was delivered in very brief, carefully monitored sessions, to actually land as a cue of safety.
And once her system started retuning,
the hypervigilance diminished, the sensory defenses dropped, and she quickly returned to her baseline of play and connection.
That's amazing. Okay, next we transition to UAs. This is such a powerful illustration of SSP's capacity to address severe, long-term dissociation from complex trauma.
UAS's history. I mean, it was war, refugee camps, childhood abuse. It resulted in chronic PTSD. She existed in a perpetual state of dorsal vagal shutdown.
Severe dissociation.
Yeah, feeling cut off from her body, just trudging through life, as she put it. She carried immense physical and emotional pain, but she couldn't feel it consciously. And critically active, narrative-based therapies like EMDR had been completely intolerable for her.
They would trigger panic attacks and flashbacks?
Immediate, overwhelming ones. Her system simply couldn't handle the cognitive activation.
So this sounds like a textbook case where a bottom-up intervention is mandatory before any top-down therapy could ever succeed.
Absolutely. Her provider, Ginny, followed that safe before sound protocol rigorously. UAs initially listened for just a few seconds at a time. The intervention wasn't about the volume or the duration of the music. It was about the quality of the co-regulation.
So Jenny's presence was the key.
It was everything. She provided constant grounding and a calm presence, creating this tiny window of time where EOC could experience a minor physiological jolt, that sympathetic energy she needed to climb out of dorsal shutdown and then immediately re-regulate without being totally overwhelmed.
And what was the big psychological shift for her?
The key outcome was that the SSP allowed Uosi to focus on her physiological state, the physical sensations of activation and settling, rather than getting instantly hijacked and re-trapped by her traumatic story.
That's a huge distinction.
It's everything. By focusing on her body's movements towards safety, she built a tangible emotional regulation capacity she had never had before. She learned that her body could handle small increments of stress and recovery.
And the measurable clinical data backs this up.
It does. The changes were clinically significant. Her scores on a measure of autonomic symptoms dropped dramatically, reflecting a shift toward flexibility. Her PTSD scores also showed a profound reduction. The SSP didn't resolve her trauma story, but it built the physiological foundation, the strong vagal brake, that allowed her to finally tolerate active therapies like EMDR later on.
Our third case, Naomi, highlights this profound and often overlooked connection between chronic defense states and chronic physical pain, specifically fibromyalgia.
Naomi's presentation was just a perfect constellation of ANS disruption. She had chronic widespread pain, neck, back, and head pain, and auditory issues like tinnitus and recurring ear infections.
And her history involved early relational trauma.
Yes, which led to a freeze response. So she had this low facial affect but intense internal tension and a widespread bodily numbness. Her whole system was just locked in defense.
The healing path here was really physical, though. It required deep manual therapy before the SSP was even introduced. Why was that necessary?
Because the trauma had led to such somatic rigidity and numbness, Naomi's body was initially unresponsive to gentle touch. She had subconsciously been seeking boundaries, and her provider, Autumn, realized that her system needed intense, deep pressure just to register touch input and differentiate where her body began and ended.
So her defenses had to be addressed physically first.
Exactly. Autumn's regulated presence and her manual skill created a sense of safe boundaries, which is a prerequisite for the ventral vagus to come back online.
And when they finally integrated the SSP, its success was totally contingent on co-regulation from a loved one.
It's such a powerful point. The nervous system trusts safety from connection more than it trusts filtered music alone. Naomi found the SSP activating, even distressing, when she listened by herself.
But with her partner.
She only achieved a sense of safety when listening while holding her partner Joshua's hand or sitting with her beloved pets. The presence of a trusted, regulated nervous system was required for her system to interpret the auditory input as a safety cue.
And what was the outcome in terms of the chronic pain that had plagued her for years?
The shift was dramatic. Her daily pain level dropped from a debilitating range of 5 to 8, often interfering with basic function, all the way down to a 0 to 3. And crucially, her body became much softer, more receptive, and pliable to touch. It reversed this decades-long chronic defense loop that was generating the fibromyalgia.
Our final case involves the family unit of Melanie, Clay, and Sophia. It illustrates how grief can lock an entire family into separate, contagious, defensive states after a sudden death.
This is a powerful demonstration of the contagious nature of autonomic states. Melanie, the mother, was in a dorsal vagal shutdown, deep hopelessness, tearful, unable to focus.
And her son?
Clay, the son, was stuck in a sympathetic fight response. Anger, isolation, behavioral issues at school.
And the daughter?
Sophia, the daughter, was in a dorsal freeze state. She was unable to speak. She was relying on others, socially withdrawn. They were all sharing the same house, but they were physiologically isolated in their own defense silos.
The intervention was deeply immersive, blending the SSP with nature and creative arts.
The environment itself was the co-regulator. They delivered the SSP core outdoors on a farm, and they integrated it with focused creative arts. Watercolor painting was used to help externalize emotions that were too complex for words.
And sculpting.
Sculpting with clay and beeswax was used to provide grounding somatic input, helping to counteract the emotional and physical coldness of shock.
And the unique role of the horses in this healing process.
The farm environment, especially the horses, provided immense grounding. The book noted that the rhythmic, deep breathing of the horses helped to regulate the family's own breathing patterns. Grief is so often bound with the breath. It's held, it's constricted, it's shallow. The quiet, large, calm presence of the animals awakened their senses and allowed their defenses to drop in a non-threatening space.
And how did this collective healing manifest in the family dynamic?
The entire family system shifted. Clay's sympathetic anger just diminished, and he started engaging in positive, supportive roles at home. Sophia, who had been relying on family members to speak for her, found her voice again. She began socializing, participating in group activities.
And Melanie?
Melanie transitioned from that deep hopelessness to regaining her grounding and her internal strength. She was able to handle responsibilities again, re-engage in supportive activities like grief support and yoga. It just proves that healing, when it's facilitated by safety, becomes this synergistic, shared process.
These case studies really underscore a crucial point. Nervous system resilience is foundational to everything. And that brings us to part 4, the practical application. For you, the listener, the book offers a wealth of tools for self-directed change to help you cultivate that resilience on your own.
The transition from a passive listening therapy to active self-regulation requires a real shift in mindset. And the goal is absolutely not to eliminate the sympathetic or dorsal states.
Right, they're adaptive. We need them.
They're adaptive defense mechanisms. The goal is to cultivate autonomic flexibility. It's the ability to fluidly navigate that whole continuum, spending time in all the states without getting defensively stuck in any of them.
And the book proposes 3 preparatory steps for this self-work. Step 1 is recognize your current physiological state.
This is foundational awareness. Just asking yourself, am I floating right now in green? Am I flipping out in red? Or am I flopping down in gray? This initial non-judgmental pause is what the system needs to differentiate between being safe and just being reactive.
Oh, yeah.
You can't regulate a state you haven't even acknowledged.
Okay, step 2. Tune in to the physical sensations that go with that state. This is engaging your interoception.
Yes. Pay forensic attention to the physical reality. Is your stomach tight? Are your pupils dilated? Is there a subtle tremor? Notice and label these sensations, not your thoughts or your story about them, but the pure physical input. This focused attention helps discharge some of the activation.
And it creates space between the stimulus and the response.
Exactly. And step 3 is to acknowledge your thoughts, emotions, and resulting behaviors without judging them.
That's the hard part.
It is. But understanding that the frantic, racing thoughts you have during a red state or the profound apathy during a gray state are byproducts of your physiology. They're not inherent flaws. By accepting these as temporary adaptive responses, you begin to transform your ANS from this internal enemy into a predictable ally that simply needs support.
Okay, let's explore the practical activities themselves, organized by the state they're designed to support.
Let's do it.
Let's start with activities designed to support and strengthen that ventral vagal green state.
So these are all activities that leverage the social engagement system. Savoring positive feelings, actually stopping to consciously dwell on a moment of joy or gratitude, that strengthens the ventral pathways.
Journaling about connected moments.
Yes, that helps you map your own path back to green. Obviously, connecting with friends, engaging in face-to-face reciprocity is essential co-regulation. And critically, vocalizing.
Humming, singing.
Humming, singing, whistling, even laughing. It directly engages the muscles of the larynx and pharynx, which sends positive feedback right to the ventral vagal complex in the brainstem. It immediately reinforces that sense of safety.
Okay, what about when the system is on high alert, in the sympathetic red activated state, when you're flipping out? The goal there is containment and slowing down. What should you reach for?
Red activities focus almost entirely on calming that mobilization energy. And physiologically, it's about engaging the vagal brake by extending your exhale.
So breath work.
Focused, calming breath work, like box breathing, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, or any technique that just makes your exhale longer than your inhale. The simple act of placing your hand on heart or hand on stomach is a powerful, self-soothing touch.
And the soothing butterfly hug. I've tried that one.
It's surprisingly effective, right? You cross your arms over your chest and just do alternating gentle taps. It's rhythmic, bilateral stimulation that signals safety. And finally, just finding humor. A moment of levity can quickly shift a sympathetic state.
And finally, what do we do when we're in that profound depletion of the dorsal vagal gray shutdown state? This is the toughest state to initiate movement from.
It really is. Gray activities have to be gentle. They're focused on awakening the system without triggering a big sympathetic surge, which could cause a panic attack. So the emphasis is on warmth, gentle movement, and sensory activation.
So vocalizing again.
Again, vocalizing, even just a groan, a sigh, a hum, is so effective because it forces gentle movement in the core of your system. Simple movement, like gentle stretching or practicing cat-cow yoga poses, increases circulation just enough to gently shake off the numbness.
And a weighted blanket.
Using a weighted blanket provides supportive, deep pressure that acts as a ground, helping your body feel its own boundaries and shift out of that state of collapse.
Let's delve into two specific techniques the book highlights that really target the fundamental physiology. First, breath work, and second, the Stanley Rosenberg exercise.
The breath is the most accessible and rapid state shifter we have, period. Because the vagus nerve is so intricately linked to our respiratory muscles. We just need to remember the physiological efficiency of it.
The extended exhale.
The extended exhale physically engages the ventral vagal brake. It slows the heart rate and induces prompt calming. If you need energy, like climbing out of a gray state, an inhale-focused breath, which releases the brake, provides a gentle energy infusion. Mastering your exhale is mastering your brake.
And Stanley Rosenberg's basic exercise is fascinating because it targets the structure right around the brainstem itself.
It's a powerful passive technique. It's designed to relieve tension in the suboccipital muscles at the base of your skull and increase blood flow to the brainstem where the vagus nerve originates.
So how do you do it?
You lie flat on your back, you interlace your fingers behind your head, keeping your elbows wide. And then, without moving your head at all, you slowly move just your eyes as far to the right as possible. You hold for about 30 seconds. And then you repeat to the left. You hold until you get this very specific physiological marker of success.
Which is that spontaneous audible release.
Exactly. The body's unconscious signal that relaxation has occurred and that your ventral vagal tone has increased is a spontaneous yawn, sigh, or swallow. That physical guttural release signals that the tension has been released and the ANS has successfully settled back into a green state. It's an amazing, immediate marker that requires zero cognitive effort.
And finally, the book details two accessible passive touch techniques that leverage the supportive input of our skin's sensory receptors to calm the system.
The first is the simplified self-havening. This involves crossing your arms over your chest and just gently sliding your hands from your shoulders down to your elbows repeatedly, maybe 10 to 20 times. This rhythmic, predictable somatic input activates the parasympathetic response. The key is that smooth, predictable motion.
And the healing head hold.
This is a powerful grounding technique. You just place one hand across your forehead and the other at the base of your skull, cupping the back of your head. And you hold this supportive, focused touch until you feel a discernible shift. Often people report feeling a calming pulse beneath their fingers or a softening of internal tension. It's a primal cue of security. #outro.
So we've taken a really extensive dip dive here. We started with the rigorous science of the Polyvagal Theory, detailing that hierarchical three-part system and the essential role of the vagal brake.
Then we explored how the Safe and Sound protocol acoustically tunes our nervous system to detect safety signals.
And we reviewed those powerful case studies that demonstrate just dramatic physiological and functional shifts in people struggling with chronic pain, dissociation, and grief.
The core synthesis really remains. Polyvagal Insight 8 reminds us that the ANS isn't a side effect. It is at the very core of our physical and mental wellness. When the nervous system is supported and retuned towards safety, symptoms that confounded doctors for decades, whether it's chronic anxiety, sensory issues, complex pain, they can often just spontaneously abate.
Because the underlying physiological defense is finally dropped.
It's finally let go.
And the power of this perspective, I think, lies in its profound compassion. It changes how we view ourselves and others. We stop labeling symptoms as bad behavior or character defects.
And we start seeing them with forensic clarity as adaptive reflexive defenses driven by a physiological state that is just trying its best to survive.
That shift from judgment to understanding, it's the absolute key to unlocking connection and healing, not just for you as an individual, but for all of your relationships.
We saw it in every single case. The ability of Yuas to finally engage with her trauma story, Katie's return to play, Naomi's body becoming pliable again. These outcomes weren't driven by willpower, they were driven by a regulated nervous system. The body is so intelligent, and when you give it unambiguous cues of safety, it works relentlessly in your favor.
I think the most important and maybe the most provocative thought the book leaves us with relates to the contagiousness of our autonomic state. We saw that a single provider's regulated ventral state, Tracy's presence, Jenny's co-regulation, can create this powerful ripple of healing for one client.
Autonomic states are fundamentally contagious. If defensive states like panic or anxiety or rage can spread rapidly through a group, so too can co-regulation and curiosity and safety. The book suggests that when you consciously maintain a state of safety and connection in your daily life, when you let down your own internal physiological armor, a benevolence and love emerge that make life wonderful.
And it benefits not just you, but your entire community, your entire network.
The path to collective resilience truly begins with individual state regulation.
We hope you feel well-equipped now to use the compassionate, insightful lens of PVT in your own life and in your relationships. Thank you so much for joining us for this extensive deep dive into Safe and Sound.
And we sincerely hope you find those glimmers, those micro moments of safety, connection, and ease that remind your system that you are safe and you're available for life.